I'm excited to welcome today Vickey Easa, who is a licensed, what is the I?
Independent.
Licensed independent clinical social worker who is here today to talk to us about healthy self-esteem through an Orthodox lens. Thanks. Take it away.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me okay? Can you still hear me okay? So I'm going to just leave that right there. As Randa just said, this workshop is on healthy self-esteem through an Orthodox Christian lens. What is self-esteem? This is my favorite area to talk about, and even I hate that title. Self-esteem being the title. Does anyone even know what self-esteem is? What does it mean to esteem yourself? It's where we place our worth. It's where we place our value. It's how we look at ourselves. And I'm going to begin with healthy self-esteem. So healthy self-esteem, there are handouts in one of these pews up here, guys, right behind Sangeetha. She's pointing you. Healthy self-esteem stems from the inside out, and it is based on God and His image. Healthy self-esteem at the core is when we can say the following sentences. I have worth because I was born in the image of God. I stand equal to all, eye to eye and toe to toe. I am not better nor worse than others. Nothing I say or do adds to my worth nor detracts from my worth. I am enough and I matter in spite of my flaws and imperfections. I can hold myself in warm regard in spite of my flaws and imperfections. Note, these last two recognize our humanness, that as humans we are imperfect, we are flawed. And yet, I have yet to meet the person who believes those statements without therapy or coaching. Which leads me to unhealthy self-esteem. And actually, the rest of this workshop is about unhealthy self-esteem, and the Orthodox Christian perspective is the healthy stuff. It's the goal. And we live in a fallen world. Today I'd call it a secular world. So the Orthodox Christian lens is the healthy stuff that I just started with. I will trickle it in for the rest, but now, like I said, the focus is on the unhealthy side. Unhealthy self-esteem comes from the outside in, and it comes from one of the following three sources. I have a fun mnemonic device for these sources, which happens to be my last name. And I'm going to mention the sources first, then I get into detail on each one. So my last name is Easa, E-A-S-A. E is for esteem. A is for achievements. S is for society. And A is for assets or attributes. Achievement. I have worth because of what I do, what I achieve. If I'm in sales and I hit my sales goal. If I'm in sports and I win the game. I'm from Boston. Tom Brady may not be from Boston anymore, but he's a really good example of this. And full disclosure, shocker, I'm not his friend. So I don't know if any of this is true. But my theory is, so a couple years ago, during the Super Bowl, it was theorized that there was a play he did that lost the game. If Tom Brady is achievement-based, he wakes up on Monday morning shattered. It was his fault that they lost the game. Again, just a theory, but just to give you an image of what achievement-based could look like. It could also be if I'm a stay-at-home mom and I make a good meal. I mean, it's literally whatever I do, whatever I achieve, how I perform. And that's where my value and my personal worth stems from, in my unhealthy place. Society. I have worth because you say I do. Whomever the you is. Parents, boss, teacher, friends, children, romantic partner. I mean, literally whomever it is. Taylor Swift, also not one of my best friends, shocker. But her song, and this line sounds better to music, her song Blank Space literally has a line in it that says, find out who you want, be that girl for a month. That's society, or what I also call other-based. Part of my own method as a therapist is I do share about myself as relevant. So my clients know I myself am society-based. I had to be the teacher's pet in school. I had to be the boss's favorite. I'm in private practice by myself now. I don't have a boss anymore. I thought I was off the hook, and then some family stuff came up a year ago with my cousins, and I found out, oh no, here it is. My cousins have become my other. So, like I said, I thought I was off the hook without a boss, but it showed up anyway. Assets and attributes. I have worth because of what I have or what I look like. I have the right car, house, shoes, purse. I have great hair or a pretty face. What I have or what I look like, assets and attributes. So I will say I was talking with my husband Gabriel about how to make this both more orthodox and more funny or entertaining. So he came up with Peter, yes, Peter from the Bible. We could say that Peter was society-based. He worried so much what people thought of him, he denied Christ 3 times. Just to give you guys an image. Noah was asset-based. Noah had to have the biggest ship. I was wondering if I could call Paul achievement-based because he had to have the most converts. Or even when he was Saul, he had to kill the most. So just throwing stuff out there to think about. Let me paint you another picture, and this is one of my favorite examples. I want you to picture 7-year-old twins, a boy and a girl. She's a violin prodigy who's probably going to go to Juilliard. And her brother at 7 is an ADHD mess who can't color in the lines and can't turn in his homework on time. And yes, 7-year-olds have homework. Is either of them worth more? Thank you. She's nodding her head no. So, no. And I do have clients who even at 7 can't see that. But generally speaking, at 7, we can look at them and think, no, they're the same. But I want you to take those same twins at 7 and add 30 years to their life. So now they're 37. She is a violin prodigy. She teaches at Juilliard. She's first chair in the New York Symphony. And her brother's an ADHD mess who can't keep a job and can't get out of their parents' basement. Is either of them worth more? And you're correct to shake no, but that's when we can see it. At least that's when I saw it at the seminar. Like, oh, because it looks now like she is, because that's achievement-based. But they're those same 7-year-olds. And I have had clients that look at me at 7 and go, no, she's worth more. And that's good clinical work, by the way, for us therapists out there. Because then it became, how young do you need to picture them in your mind to see that they're equal? I've had clients who have to picture themselves literally as infants to see that they have worth, because by 7 they didn't believe it. Generally speaking, someone just, not shout, we're in church, but someone shouted out, generally speaking, which gender is achievement-based? Yeah, thank you. Generally speaking, which gender is society-based? Yes. When our worth comes from these 3 unhealthy sources, we are always left unhappy and unfulfilled. And each source has its own unique outlook, challenges, and unhealthy goals attached with it. And I'll be going into detail on each one. Some people fall into one source, purely one source. My kickboxing instructor, Chelsea, she went back to school later in life, and she has to get straight A's. If she gets an A-, she's shattered, and she doesn't care what anyone thinks about it. This is all on her. And she knows she's a great kickboxing instructor, and that's where her worth comes from, what she does. I know I can get good grades. I know I'm a good instructor. Others, like myself, I know I outed myself earlier as society-based, but I actually am a blend. I use my achievements to get society to like me. So when I had mentioned I need my boss to like me, I always had to have perfect charts. Do my job perfectly. Back in school, how did I become the teacher's pet? By volunteering, by having good grades, by studying. So I used the achievements to get others to like me. And I believe that most people have a blend, and I believe most people are actually more society-based. Humans are a communal species. We are biologically wired for connection. It is our optimal state. And being out of connection, i.e. disconnected, is painful. I'm not sure how many people in this room have kids and how old your kids are. In the past 10 to 15 years, when babies are born, they now do this thing called skin-to-skin contact. The naked baby, as soon as possible after birth, like washed off and weighed, is placed on either the mother's or the father's naked chest. And this is to regulate the heartbeat, and it's to begin the human connection, that bond. As I said, it regulates the heartbeat. We are meant to be in connection. So my theory, I don't have research on this, I'm not gonna lie, but my theory is that most people use achievements or assets or attributes to get society to like them more or approve of them. Yes, there are people that care about their house and just want a big house, sure. A lot of people want a big house for what their neighbors will think or their friends will think. Now you may be already asking yourself, but aren't I allowed to enjoy my job? Simply enjoy it. Or take pride when I win the game or hit my sales goal. And yes, you are. There is a fine balance between that enjoyment and tipping the scale into unhealthy. And here's my little Cliff Notes version of that scale. So if you're looking at achievement-based, pride versus worth. I know that pride is one of the 7 deadly sins. I also know that pride in very small doses is healthy and it releases endorphins in the brain. It's actually good for the body in small doses. It's the feel-good chemical. So the question for people becomes, when does it tip the scale into unhealthy? If you have a good day at work, for therapists, you nail your sessions. For nurses, you had good connections with your patients. You may end that day of like, I had a great day today. I think we often find it when it flips into the opposite of, you didn't make a good connection. You didn't make a patient smile. I didn't do good with that couple. And now at the end of the day, I'm berating myself. That's when it has tipped the scale. That's when it has become, oh, my worth depended on that. Today was a bad day. So there's a balance. If you're society-based, connection versus worth. Remember, I just said connection is healthy. It's our optimal state. But needing someone else's approval is not healthy, and that's when it tips the scale. Am I looking for the connection or am I looking for approval? Me wondering all through college, what's wrong with me that these boys don't like me? That was unhealthy. That was not about connection. That was about getting approval and worth from the boys I liked. Assets or attributes. That part is entertainment versus worth. We're allowed to have pleasure and enjoyment. We're allowed to be entertained by the stuff we have. Get a big TV and watch movies. Get a nice car and go driving in it. I encourage that. Entertainment. When does it tip the scale into my worth depends on that. So as I said, each source also has unique challenges. Achievement-based. Challenge can become workaholism and the hamster wheel. I must get more. I must be always going. I can't stop. You're always trying to outdo yourself. You're worried about the next younger, better person that's going to come along and outdo you. Society-based, you become obsessed with the other, whomever the other is, and we can't control how people think and feel about us, and it actually becomes a type of manipulation. How do I make sure that you're okay with me? Because I'm not okay with me unless you're okay with me. I know how circular that sounds, but that's really what it's about. I'm not okay myself if you're not okay with me. I can't ever fight with my husband because if he's upset with me, I'm not okay. Attribute or asset-based becomes greed. We always want more, and it's actually easier than we think to lose stuff. Nothing is forever. So those are unique challenges that come with each one. Let's go back to the beginning of what I said and remember these. I have worth because I was born in the image of God. I stand equal to all, eye to eye and toe to toe. I am not better nor worse than others. Nothing I say or do adds to my worth nor detracts from my worth. I am enough and I matter in spite of my flaws and imperfections. I can hold myself in warm regard in spite of my flaws and imperfections. See how these unhealthy sources don't line up with those healthy statements. That's where the disconnect is. And each person, for their own unique reasons, typically in childhood, doesn't believe those healthy affirmations. So that's where the work happens. Which of those don't you believe? And let's help you get to the source of why don't you believe those. One of my clients is very achievement-based, and every time I say to him, let me back up. I want to add that as a side note, for my non-Christian clients, I do leave off I was born in the image of God. So for my non-Christians, it's I have worth because I was born, period. That's actually how I was taught that statement at the training. I have worth because I was born. I have added in the image of God. One, because it's true. I mean, it's true for our non-Christians too, but they don't want to hear it. And two, because my Christian clients really appreciate hearing it. So then, now I'm going to say, it was a non-Christian client that I was talking to, every single time I say in session to him, I have worth because I was born, period, he flinches at me and shakes his head because his worth comes from his job. We haven't undone that yet. So you know it when you hear it, specifically for clients, but I think us too. I mean, when I heard those at the training, it was eye-opening for me. So these do translate to our non-Christians as well, but I think there's a benefit for the Christians. I think my Christian clients get a more full picture of it. And my goal, eventually, I would love to have a fully Orthodox practice. And short of that, I'd like to have a fully Christian practice. I'm just not there yet. I don't know if anyone in here has a fully Christian practice, but that's my goal. I did have in here small groups. So I don't know if we want to do this as small groups or if you guys just want to talk loosely, not even at the microphone, but basically doing some internal work of where do you fall? Where do you think your parents might have fallen? You likely learned this stuff, like I was saying, in childhood. I wonder what messages you might have gotten. Were you trying to get their approval? Were you trying to feel connected to your parents? So I welcome you to look into some possible different reasons where this might have stemmed from as well. Do you guys want to do it in small groups? Okay, so yeah, that. You don't want to just shout it out for the world to hear? Just under a minute left, unless you need more time. That was 5 minutes. Do you guys need more time? Because we can do more time. If you guys want like another 2 minutes, that's fine. Okay. That's fine. I have it. I've allotted. Okay. I need to do the next section. Because this room is not as conducive as I was hoping to like discussion, there's going to be time at the end, and sure you might have to come up to use the mic, but to discuss and be it feedback or any questions you have for me or pushback if you don't agree with something, I welcome all of that. It just would have to be, we have to do it at the end because of the mic and the setup. So there's another lens I want to introduce. I want you to picture everything I've described as the healthy self-esteem as a circle in the middle. And I do use hand signals for this whole section, and they are deliberate, and I can't do this without hand signals. So there's that. When I was doing this at home with this, I was like, I can't do my hand signals, so I can't do this without them. So healthy self-esteem is a healthy circle in the middle, at your core, if you will. Unhealthy from this other lens is when you go up into better than, or down into lesser than. And they are exactly what they sound like. When you're in better than, you are looking down at someone. And when you're in less than, you're looking down at yourself. The emotion behind both is the same. The question is, where am I pointing it at? So when you're up, you're pointing it out at the other, whomever the other is. And when you're down, we're pointing it in at ourselves. Some people live in one area or the other. Most people bounce. And which I'm going to explain. And as I said, the emotion behind both is the same. Some call the emotion contempt. I call it judgment. I also call it simply negative. I don't think we need to quibble on what we call it. And when I say we, I'm not talking about us. I am saying me and other therapists, because I have quibbled with many other therapists. I'm actually, sorry, see, I use my hands. I'm on a podcast coming out on Monday where she and I disagree on the contempt. But some of my background on the contempt piece, my husband Gabe again. Gabe is aware that he lives up. We were at a seminar, he outed himself. But he very firmly looked at me one day and said, "You're right, I'm up, but it's not contempt. I don't know what it is, but it's not contempt." And that day I did fight him pretty firmly, like, no, it's contempt. That's what I've heard at the trainings, on and on and on. And I'm on the receiving end, because trust me, you may not know when you're up, but the people around you know that you're up. But can I really look at someone else and say, this is the emotion you're feeling right now? So for him to look at me and say, it's not contempt, I finally decided, okay, it's still not healthy, and he agreed, and it's not worth it to me to quibble on that. It is, though, judgment, and it is icky, negative, icky. And my point becomes, as long as we're aware that it's here, who cares what we call it? Still unhealthy. And oftentimes, the verbiage can be the same between the two. I messed up becomes, no, you messed up. Or mine that's happened. I'm a horrible mother. No, you're a horrible father. Or you're a horrible husband. So true story. I do have my husband's permission to share this. It doesn't make either of us look very good. And everything I'm theorizing to you, he has acknowledged that was true at the time. My son Michael, our son Michael, is 9. 4 or 5 years ago, he was at kindergarten orientation, or had to be at kindergarten orientation, I should say. And I don't work on Mondays and Thursdays. I'm home with the kids. Years ago, Gabe went to an office every day. But he could work from home some days as needed. So the day that Michael had orientation was a Thursday, and I had an outside appointment, so Gabe worked from home so he could help with transportation. I was leaving at 12:05 for my appointment at 12:15. I'm showing you on a clock. Orientation starts at 12:30. Gabe takes him to orientation. My appointment ends, I pick him up, I bring him home. Easy peasy. And it worked just like that. But at like 1 or 2 in the afternoon, Michael looks at me and says, "Mommy, I'm hungry. Can you make me a sandwich?" And I looked over at Gabe very gently, I might add. "Honey, you didn't make him lunch before you left?" And Gabe instantly went into less than. Actually, before I tell you where he went, what he said was, "I work every day. You're home on Thursdays. Why didn't you make him lunch before you left?" I went, "Okay." And I went into the kitchen and made him lunch. What happened was Gabe went into less than instantly. Oh my God, I'm a horrible father. I forgot to make him lunch. I'm not a horrible father. You're a horrible mother. You forgot to make him lunch. I mean, spoiler alert, Michael's 9 and he's fine. It was one meal. So it didn't kill him. It does paint a really good picture of the balance. Doesn't paint a really good picture of either of us, because Gabe's also right. I don't know why I didn't make him lunch. I totally forgot, and I could have made him before I left. While it's less common, it is also possible to bounce from the up to the down. One of my colleagues, Rebecca, was upset with one of her neighbors and let her dog run onto their property and do some stuff. She felt pretty good about it in the moment because she wasn't happy with them. And less than 5 minutes later, she plummeted down. Oh my gosh, what kind of horrible person am I? How did I just let that happen? So you can bounce in either direction. It's less common to bounce from the up to the down, but it does happen. For the therapists in the room, for the therapists who see couples specifically, you are not likely to see someone in your office individually who lives purely up. Individuals you will see have a bounce. If you see someone who lives purely up, now that I'm teaching this lens, It has to be in a couple session. And that's because a person who lives purely up will never come into therapy voluntarily. They're dragged by their partner. And that person likely was raised, and I'll be honest, I haven't seen this person yet. I have colleagues who have, so I believe it happens. I just haven't seen him in my office, him or her. A person who lives up is the person that could do no wrong in childhood, was never corrected, was constantly praised. The example I was given, which is a little crass, so I'm going to apologize now, but smeared feces on the wall. It was, oh, what beautiful artwork you made. Thank you. That client lives up. I am better than everyone around me. And they don't ever go into less than. Less than is also shame. Shame versus grandiosity. Most people that I see bounce. And it's all conjecture until someone tells me. I do want to say that. So this all is like what I would call the story in my head. But personally speaking, when I'm interacting with someone and I can feel they're up, I can usually theorize what's going on. Oh, this is where you just went. Like with my husband that day, I knew, like, oh, he went down. Like, I'm a horrible father. He didn't say that part to me, but I could feel it. And then when I asked him, I kid you not, 2 years later, he was like, oh, that's exactly what happened. But it's also good to keep in mind that until we get confirmation from someone, it really is the story in our head. Like, this is my theory, and we see how it plays out. How do we treat ourselves and others when we or they don't live up to our values? And this is where judgment comes in. And the goal is to live a judgment-free life. Christ is the only judge. And that's where we're at when we're here. We're either, like I said, judging ourselves or we're judging somebody else. Why do I encourage my clients to live in their healthy center? 3 reasons that are not all obvious. The first one is obvious. It's healthy. Or it's unhealthy to not. I have on here it's unhealthy. But so, the health piece. The second reason is the more you're in one of these, you are set up to bounce into the other one. It is very challenging to get to your healthy center from one of these. It is easier to bounce into the other one. Here is healthy remorse. Here is where you breathe yourself up into equality, like those affirmations at the beginning. I breathe myself up, I'm enough and I matter. But here you have to breathe yourself down. And the way you breathe yourself down is not I'm enough and I matter, because by the way, if you're up, you know that you matter. You think you matter too much. If you're up, you're thinking against someone else, and the way to breathe yourself down is to think that person matters too. And that brings you off your high horse. That person is equal to me, we are the same. And the third reason that I teach my clients to get out of this is because the goal is to live a judgment-free life. So I'm going to give you an example from driving, because while in reality, no one deserves my contempt. But in this example, you're all going to agree with me that the person does deserve my contempt, so I like to set it up that way. If you're driving on the freeway and someone cuts you off and then slows down, they deserve your contempt. So again, they really don't, but for the sake of my example, you know that they do. I don't deserve to have that contempt within me anymore. So it's not about the other person and whether or not they deserve it. It's that I don't want to live like that. For me to be feeling that towards someone else means that feeling is within me anyway. So the goal is to rid yourself of that feeling, which does take work. This is not overnight work, by the way. I can mention that. This is work. Weeks, months, years. So as I mentioned, healthy remorse lives in the center. The up and the down are also both preoccupied with ourself. I'm going to give you an example because that was hard for me to grasp. Healthy remorse is when we can focus on the other person. Another story. A couple years ago, right around midnight heading into Father's Day, I looked at Gabe and I said, so I was thinking, I don't think we should be doing Mother's and Father's Day gifts for each other anymore because you're not my dad and it's like one more thing for me to think about. So until the kids are old enough, we'll pay for it, but until the kids are old enough to come up with the idea for gifts for themselves, I think we should stop doing gifts. Genius idea on my part. Except that he looked at me and he goes, is this your way of telling me you didn't get me a Father's Day gift? And I plummeted. Oh my God, you're right, I suck. Oh my God, I'm such a horrible wife and I can't believe I'm telling you this at midnight when there's nothing I can do about it anyway. Kid you not. And then I looked at him and I went, you didn't give me a Mother's Day gift. I bounced up. But notice how both are still about me. And then he looked at me and he was like, actually I did, and here's what it was. And that's when I went into my healthy center and I looked at him in remorse and I said, I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do about it now. I'm not going to lie to you. It's 11 o'clock. I'm not going to try to go to CVS and get you something. I said, I'm sorry. I messed up. I mean, the response I hate, I can't speak for you guys. The response I hate is like, oh, it's okay or don't worry about it. I'm like, no, just say thank you. But he handled it well, and I don't think I ever did get him a gift. But it paints a good picture about when you're here and here, it's still a preoccupation with you. Here is where you get to healthy remorse, which is all about the other person. The answer to all of this is compassion. The antidote, I like to call it, is compassion. Compassion is found in Christ. Non-judgment is found in Christ. I mean, he's the judge, but we are not. Compassion can be cultivated by building and working a whole different part of your brain. And now I'm going to introduce a hand model of the brain. I don't know if any of you in here are familiar with Dan Siegel. This is his hand model, his brain model. So this is your brain. Sorry. This is your brain stem. Keeps your heart beating. Do it this way because of that. Keeps your heart beating, your lungs breathing. I won't refer to it again. This is your subcortical part of your brain, your limbic center, your impulse, your first reaction. In this model, everything I've been telling you is from the model Relational Life Therapy. We call this your first consciousness because it happens first. This part of your brain is focused on survival, self-preservation. This part of your brain is scanning for safety versus danger 4 times a second. You couldn't correct this if you tried. 4 times a second. When you can pause and breathe, you can activate this part of your brain, which is called your neocortex. It's your higher layer of thinking. This part of your brain will shush and calm the rest of your brain. We call it your second consciousness because it happens second. This part of your brain can take up to 3 seconds to kick in, which doesn't sound like a long time, but if you're looking at 4 times a second to 3 seconds, it's 12 times slower. It is not emotion versus logic. It is emotion and integration, which is logic and emotion. This is the two working together, and the agenda of this part of the brain is connection. Me, us. How do we work together? How do we get back on the same page? We being whoever it is. Me and my kids, me and my coworkers, usually me and my husband. He tends to set this off, which by the way is not unique to us. Our spouse has a unique way of doing that. This is relational mindfulness. And this is where all skills live. So everything, all the unhealthy stuff that I've been talking about lives here. And the healthy affirmations, I have worth because I was born in the image of God, those live here. And this takes work. I literally tell my clients, none of them do this, but I tell my clients, I want you saying those healthy affirmations at least once a day, if not more. You have to rewire the part of your brain that doesn't believe in it, that's here. And it doesn't believe in it from stuff you heard in childhood. I think it was Dean who might have mentioned yesterday, like, if you heard in childhood you're worthless, you're this, you're that, that's all going to live here. And if you believe you're worthless, can you possibly believe I have worth because I was born in the image of God? I mean, literally, even grammatically, those two don't fit. So this is a whole new skill. And learning a new skill in adulthood can take up to 3 to 5 years. That's the bad news. I mean, it's not a whole painful process of 3 to 5 years, but this does take rewiring. This is a whole different way of living, but I welcome you on the process. And now I open it up if anyone has discussion or questions, comments. Don't do it just to be nice, but thank you.
Well, we had a discussion in our small group that I wanted to get your input on because I'm a child of immigrants. Many of us here are children of immigrants, or our churches have that. And we were discussing how some of these achievement-based or whatever other base, society-based, might be a survival tactic that has developed from being an immigrant in a brand new country. And I was wondering if you could possibly speak to that and what it might imply for churches.
Oh. What am I looking for churches? That's going to stump me for a minute. The first thing that comes to my mind is that's when it looks at the balance of it's okay to take pride in your work and pride in your achievements, and have your parents be proud of you. Where it tips the scale into unhealthy is when it's your worth. And I would also say, so this also gets into a little bit of boundaries, which is not part of this at all, but I could talk individually about it. And this is really harsh to say, but it's really hard to not absorb our parents' issues. So specifically for immigrants, I would say, when our parents are putting that stuff on us, that's a boundary issue where we have to think like, that's my mom's journey, I don't have to absorb it, which is hard, and then can create some disconnect. And so then there's going to be some grief with that. And there's so much I couldn't get into, but getting healthy often entails grief because not everyone with us is healthy. And getting healthy can also actually lead to loneliness because it can be really lonely to be the healthy one. Like in the circle of friends you're with or anything, it can be lonely when you're healthy and other people aren't. Depending on how unhealthy friendships can be, I actually don't recommend that my clients cut off friends. I do recommend my clients are just aware and like have healthier boundaries with certain friends, like know what you're dealing with. I have very unhealthy friends, some of them, not all of them. And I'm not going to end those relationships. I just know what I'm dealing with when I go into it. And I do also recommend to my clients, teach everyone you know this new language because it's easier to use this vernacular. Yes, my husband and I use the terms up and down at home. I use my hand signals with my children. My daughter goes up. That's her go-to, and my son goes less than. But I use this at home, and they're 8 and 9. And I know my daughter, as I said, the bounce, when she's up, I can look at her and I know, you feel less than your brother right now, don't you? You're lashing out because you feel less than him. Yes, Mommy. 1, she feels better because she feels seen and connected. And 2, she knows she's unhealthy. But yes, I do think, I like that you said the achievements. That is a little bit about boundaries of not absorbing our parents' expectations. And still feeling proud of it. Like I really do want to emphasize it's okay to be proud of ourselves in moderation. Does that help? Okay. And I don't know about the church's lens yet. I'm going to have to think about that. Anyone else? Are you up here to cut me off or with a question?
Thank you, Vicky. It was very helpful. I liked your model, and I love your imagery too. And I think especially with kids, and not just clients, but even just in our own homes with our children, using that is a great way to teach. So thank you.